Gods of War Reforged. Chapter 1, The White Knights. Nathan's father, a man of honor and courage, led the White Knights with unwavering determination. Born into the order, Nathan's path was set after his father's death. To lead the White Knights through earth, heaven, and hell to victory. This was his destiny, a legacy passed down through generations. David, skilled in the dark arts of black magic, was taught by his elder, Greem. Greem, the wise and enigmatic leader of the monastery, had many followers and would later lend his aid to the Highlanders in their time of need. Stuart's brother, a master swordsman, had taught him the art of combat. After his brother's tragic death from fever, Stuart joined the White Knights as a teenager. His true love was kidnapped by death and taken to hell, prompting Stuart to vow he would fight until he rescued her. Stephen, a loyal friend to Stuart, had also been targeted by death. Stuart managed to save him, and in gratitude, Stephen vowed to fight alongside Stuart until his true love was found once more. Scott's story began with tragedy. As a child, his mother told him to hide in the cupboard until sunrise. Amidst the screams, Scott witnessed his parents' murder. His father, a White Knight, had hidden a spear in the cupboard. Scott used it to kill the demon responsible for his parents' deaths. Seeking guidance, Scott found Nathan's father, who taught him the ways of the White Knights, filling the void left by Scott's own father. The White Knights were not only warriors, but also revolutionaries. The British government, corrupt and willing to surrender to the approaching demons, was overthrown by the White Knights. They could not stand by and watch as the last free country in the world fell into darkness. With a decisive coup, they took control, ensuring that the fight against evil continued unimpeded. In the early days of their struggle, the White Knights were aided by the Chinese mystic Zhuoqi. Fleeing China in secret, Zhuoqi traveled to Japan, where he mastered the way of the samurai. Years later, Li's parents, top generals of the White Knights, sought him out after dreams of the great Zhuoqi, believing he held the key to defeating the Dark Horde. Zhuoqi agreed to consider their offer to join them in Europe. Tragedy struck when Li's parents died at sea. The young Li washed up on the shores of Japan where Zhuoqi found him. Realizing Li was not of Asian origin, Zhuoqi requested help from Nathan's father for safe passage to Europe. He raised Li in the way of the samurai, imparting ancient wisdom and martial skills. Chapter 2, The Beginning. Li, a man without a family, was raised by the mystic Zhuoqi, who had fled China and mastered the way of the samurai in Japan. This mentor taught Li the way of the sword and instilled in him the discipline of a warrior. On what seemed like an ordinary day, Li awoke with a strange feeling. He went through his usual routine of training, but something felt off. He sensed he was being followed. As dusk fell, Li walked through a back lane he usually avoided at night due to its gloominess. A thick mist lingered in the air, making the path even more foreboding. Determined to get home quickly, he pressed on. Halfway through, he heard whispering. He stopped, looked around, but saw nothing. Dropping his bag, he stood still, feeling the cold air tighten around him, making it hard to breathe. Then he heard, "Finally, we have found you." An aggressive shout followed. A bag was thrown over his head, and a sharp thud knocked him unconscious. In his unconscious state, Li dreamt. He was on the floor, holding a woman in his arms. She had been poisoned, and while the dream was vivid, it made no sense to him. Suddenly, water splashed on his face, and he heard, "Wake up!" Li found himself tied up in a dark room with a single candle burning. The dream lingered in his mind, its meaning now unclear. A man with long hair stood before him. Li, confused and disoriented, asked, Why am I here? The man replied, because of your past. We need you. Lee was incredulous. What could you possibly need me for? All I know is how to practice with a samurai sword. The man said, forgive me, I haven't introduced myself. I am Stuart, and we need you because a war against mankind is approaching. It draws closer each day. We need strong individuals who will fight for what they believe in to stand by us against evil. Lee listened in astonishment. Who are we fighting against? Stuart continued. We are looking for a certain woman. I heard you have dreamed of her and can describe her to us. The dream returned to Lee's mind, and he said, yes, I have dreamed of a woman, but how can we be sure it's the woman you seek? Stuart replied, because nobody else would dream of a woman dying in his arms as you have. Lee was speechless. How could Stuart know about his dream? Stuart moved across the room, sat down, and pulled his hood over his head, deep in thought. Shortly after, another cloaked man entered the room and asked, tell me, Lee, would you ever kill a man? Lee replied, it would depend on whether I absolutely had to. The man continued, would you kill him if he betrayed you and tried to kill the one you loved, but you had the chance to let him go? Lee answered, well, I wouldn't think he deserved to live, so yes, I would kill him. The man walked towards Lee, kneeled down, grabbed his hand, and with a solemn yet desperate voice asked, will you help us? We need to defend our homes from what is coming. To this day, Lee didn't know what compelled him, but he rose to his feet and said, yes, I will help you. The kneeling man then introduced himself. I am Stan. Chapter 3. Told the Truth. Later that night, they untied Lee and led him through a dark, narrow hallway. The cold stone walls and flickering torches gave the place the eerie feel of an ancient castle. As they brought him into a large room, Lee noticed several others gathered there. He could feel their eyes on him, assessing, curious. One of them stepped forward, a burly man with a grizzled beard. I guess they needed you too, he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Lee nodded, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. As he looked around, a woman caught his eye. She was strikingly beautiful, with eyes that seemed to pierce through him and long, wild hair that framed her face. She approached him, her expression a mix of intrigue and concern. What do you think this is all about? She asked. Lee shrugged, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm not sure. I hope it's just a nightmare. The woman smiled faintly. I'm Elise, she said. My father taught me how to wield a sword. He never told me where he got his knowledge, but I recently found out he fought for a secret army called the White Knights. He was killed in battle. Her voice faltered, and Lee, who had never known his own parents, felt a pang of empathy. He gently put his arm around her shoulders, offering silent comfort. Two others joined them. I'm Stee, said a lean man with a sharp, intelligent gaze. Self-taught with a blade. And I'm David, said a man with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. I practice witchcraft and healing. Their introductions were brief, but Lee sensed the depth of their experiences and the weight of their pasts. They were all here for a reason, drawn together by a common, unknown purpose. Chapter 4. A Moving Speech. The next morning, Stuart entered their quarters, his presence commanding immediate attention. We are all going to see something important that will make you understand why you were brought here, he said. They followed him down a long flight of stairs, descending deep underground. The air grew colder, and the dim light from their torches cast eerie shadows on the stone walls. They reached a dark tunnel, and Stuart paused. We have to pass through. As they walked forward, Lee felt a cold chill run down his spine. He moved closer to Elise, who instinctively grabbed his hand. After what felt like an eternity, they saw a bright light at the end of the tunnel. It grew stronger, almost blinding, as they approached. They emerged into a large, circular room. Lee looked up, marveling at the light blue stained glass ceiling that created a rippling effect, like sunlight on water. Stuart, Stee, and 5 others, all dressed in black cloaks, stood before them. A man with long black hair and an air of authority stepped forward. "You must not be afraid. Just hear what I have to say, and you may leave if you wish. Stuart here will lead you out," he began. "Today is February 4th, 1860. In about 2 months we will be fighting a war against another dimension called Venom. The warriors of that dimension cannot be killed by guns, rendering modern armies useless. The only weapons that can kill them are swords, spears, and arrows. You, the people here today, are the best. There are 8,000 of you, and we would like you to join a cause that has lasted for hundreds of years, created by exiled Templar knights." He pulled out a long roll of ancient parchment and began to read, translating from Latin. "After being banished by all the crowns of Europe and the Pope for treason, we Templar knights swore to protect the world from the ultimate evil. We have correctly predicted many things, but this is our worst prediction yet, coming from the east. An army of demons led by Death himself. From the south, Satan and all the evil he holds in hell. And from the north, not God, but my white knights, who stand in the way of evil and will do anything to save the earth from total domination of evil and the loss of all human life." Lee stood in awe, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Everything the Templars had predicted had come true. Why would this be any different? The man continued, his voice steady but urgent. "There is a woman who must be protected from the evil forces. If evil takes her, the world will end, and the kingdom of heaven will belong to Satan himself." The room fell into a tense silence. The man then put forth his request. "So, warriors of our earth, will you go home and wait for this terrible fate to come to you, your friends, your families, and defend them alone, or will you join the White Knights, be part of a united front, and live on against all evil?" A powerful, unified cry erupted from the room. "Yes, we will fight!" Lee felt a surge of determination. For the first time, he understood his purpose. He was no longer just a man with a sword. He was part of something much greater. Together, they would face the coming darkness and fight for the survival of all humanity. Chapter 5. A White Knight's Guide on How to Fight. Later that day, Nathan approached Lee. "You are one of the best swordsmen here, so I'm giving you a chance to learn the way we White Knights use the sword," Nathan said. Lee accepted the offer, and Nathan led him to a room that was surprisingly clean and well-maintained, considering their surroundings. Nathan began demonstrating a series of intricate sword moves that left Lee thoroughly impressed. He spoke as he moved, his voice steady and authoritative. "The only way to kill a demon is by the sword. You must know your sword and love your sword. When your enemy approaches, show him that your bond with your sword is unbreakable. Let your sword pierce through the evil demon, and he will realize too late the strength of your connection." Lee was moved by Nathan's words, feeling a deep respect for the man and his philosophy. Nathan then walked towards Lee and said, "I have a gift for you from your mentor, the old samurai. He wanted you to have his most treasured possession." Nathan clapped his hands, and Stephen entered the room, carrying a wrapped bundle. He handed it to Lee, who unwrapped it to reveal the red dragon sword. Its handle was striped red and black like a tiger, and the blade had a graceful curve, reminiscent of a samurai sword. Lee felt an instant connection to the weapon, a sudden love and respect for its craftsmanship. "Show me what the old man taught you," Nathan requested. Lee performed a series of twists and turns, demonstrating his skill. The others watched, impressed. Suddenly, Lee stopped and looked at Stuart and Nathan. "Wait a minute, what happened to Kuo-chi? Is he okay?" Stuart's expression turned somber. "We tried to reach your home before the spy demons did, but we were too late. They took him, likely mistaking him for you." Lee fell silent, deep in thought, hoping his mentor was safe. 3 weeks passed in a blur of intense training. One day, Nathan summoned Lee and Stuart. "We have a mission for you," he said. "Your task is to find the woman. You don't know her yet, but by tomorrow you will. Be ready." Dismissed, Lee returned to his quarters where Elise and Stay were waiting. Elise handed him a bowl of soup. "I'm getting bored of waiting around for something that may never happen," she confessed. Lee finished his soup and looked around the dimly lit room, the single candle casting long shadows. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts drifting to the mysterious woman he was supposed to find. Elise lay beside him, her presence comforting. "I'm tired of feeling alone," she whispered. "Sleeping in a bed where I feel cold because I have no one to hold me." Lee put his arms around her, and she moved closer. He ran his fingers through her hair, their eyes meeting. They kissed, a tender moment of connection in the midst of chaos. As she began to undress, a loud crash jolted Lee awake. He found himself fully clothed, arms still around a sleeping Elise. He wondered if their intimate moment had been a dream. Not wanting to disturb her, he lay back down and eventually fell asleep again. He dreamt of a large city with a road leading to a small cottage by a lake. A woman resembling the one from his vision sat on a rock. As he approached, she disappeared, replaced by a tall, cloaked figure wielding a large axe. "Now your woman is mine, and so are you," the figure said, pinning Lee to the ground. Lee woke with a scream, drenched in sweat. Elise was awake, trying to calm him. "It was only a nightmare," she said softly. The candle had burned out and dawn was breaking. Nathan and Stuart entered the room. "Did you find her?" Nathan asked. "Yes," Lee replied, still shaken. "I believe she's on the outskirts of London." Nathan's expression turned serious. "Then to London you must go. Get dressed. Death will have kidnappers after her, including his best demon, Slaith. He commands around 30 demons. Be ready by 10 nigh." Lee nodded, steeling himself for the journey ahead. Chapter 6. Search for the Woman. When Lee was ready, Stuart took him outside the castle. The rain had been relentless, and the ground was saturated, making the world feel soggy and grey. They walked toward a stable, the muddy path squelching under their boots. "This is my stable," Stuart said. "Pick whichever horse you wish. We're quite far from London, so we'd better get a move on." Lee selected a sturdy chestnut horse, and they set off. The journey to London was long and arduous. As they rode, Lee tried to familiarize himself with their location. They were in York, which meant a full day's travel ahead. The road was quiet, the only sounds being the clopping of hooves and the distant cawing of crows. After some time, Stuart broke the silence. "Are you as good as Nathan with a sword?" Lee pondered the question. "I don't know. I was trained by an old samurai who was very skilled with a sword." Stuart nodded thoughtfully. "Nathan knows only the ways of the White Knights. You, on the other hand, have learned both White Knight and samurai techniques. You might be better than Nathan." Lee considered this and nodded. Stuart advised him to get some rest, as he might need it. Lee closed his eyes, drifting off into a fitful sleep. In his dream, Lee found himself running up countless flights of stairs, pursued by an unseen force. A man cloaked in black led the way, the woman from his previous dreams trailing behind. Suddenly the scene shifted. He was in a great hall with Stuart and Nathan, the walls shaking from powerful impacts. Lee's fear was palpable, but he knew he had to be strong. He saw his dragon sword, pulled it out, and readied himself as the door at the far end of the hall burst open. Lee woke with a start. Stuart's hand was on his shoulder. "We've arrived at a cottage outside of London." Dismounting, Lee surveyed the area. He walked around the back of the cottage, searching for the lake and rock from his dream. He found them, and near the rock lay a woman, unconscious. Lee rushed to her side and lifted her gently. She looked just like the woman from his dream. Suddenly, Stuart screamed, "Lee! Behind you!" Stuart raced toward Lee with his sword drawn. Lee dropped the woman and turned to see two creatures charging at him. One had an orange face with black dots and glowing red eyes, wearing medieval armor. It was Slaith, accompanied by Istar, a blue-skinned demon with black dots on his face. Lee drew his sword and stood protectively in front of the woman. Stuart joined Lee, his sword ready. "Let's see if you can beat these demons." Slaith smirked. "You really think you can beat me?" Istar laughed mockingly. The demons charged. Stuart turned, swinging his sword in a full arc, clashing with Slaith's blade. Slaith began to tire under Stuart's relentless attacks. Meanwhile, Lee fought fiercely against Istar, eventually cutting the demon almost in half. As Istar lay dying, Slaith tripped Lee, cut a lock of the woman's hair, and fled towards his 30 other demons. "Into the cottage!" Stuart shouted, grabbing Lee's arm. "We'll hold them off in there. Show me what you can do." Lee picked up the woman and rushed inside, laying her gently on the floor. Stuart and Lee barricaded the windows and doors as the demons surrounded the house. Slaith's voice echoed menacingly. "So you killed my best friend, Istar, but it will be me and my men who finish you for him." Stuart and Lee drew their swords. "Come on then, Slaith," Stuart taunted. "Give us everything you've got." The door smashed open, but the barricade held. Stuart noticed a kettle on the stove, its water boiling. While Lee cut down the demons trying to force their way in, Stuart filled a bucket with scalding water. "Lee, move!" he shouted, throwing the hot water over a couple of demons. They fell writhing in agony, and Stuart finished them off with his sword. Slaith escaped through a portal with about 15 demons, leaving a dozen behind. The remaining demons broke into the cottage. Lee and Stuart stood back to back, swords ready. "This is what I call a last stand," Lee said. Stuart laughed, throwing his sword into one demon, killing it instantly. They fought fiercely, cutting down the demons until only 2 remained. The last 2 demons charged from either end. Lee and Stuart ducked and dodged their swings, sweeping their legs out from under them and finishing them off. Breathing heavily, Stuart said, "He's gone, but at least the woman is still alive. Let's get her back to the castle." They carried the woman into the carriage and returned to the castle to see Nathan. Chapter 7. The storm has begun. Later that day, the woman lay asleep in the carriage. Lee gazed out into the distance, noticing dark clouds looming on the horizon. They were so thick and dark they seemed to turn day into night, with flashes of lightning illuminating their depths. Stuart, noticing the approaching storm, urged the horses forward. "Looks like there's a storm coming. We'd better get a move on before it hits us," he said, his voice tense. "Faster!" he shouted, and the horses galloped toward Holy Island Castle. The rain began to pour heavily, the thick drops drenching them as they raced against the storm. Lightning flashed continuously, and they barely made it inside the castle before the full fury of the storm descended. Inside the castle, they hurried to Nathan's room, laying the woman gently on his bed. Nathan turned to Lee, his expression serious. "The changes are beginning. The storms are happening. Death will be here soon. After the storm clears, we head for Dover." Lee nodded, trying to understand the urgency. Why Dover? He wondered aloud. Nathan's gaze was distant. "We need to rally more White Knights. The battle ahead will require every ounce of strength we have." The next morning, Lee woke to find the woman sitting at the foot of his bed, her dark brown eyes watching him. She had a pure, beautiful smile, her light skin glowing softly in the morning light. Her long black hair framed her face like a silken curtain. "Thank you for what you did," she said softly. "I recognized your face from my dreams. You've always been protecting me. When you saved me the other day, I thought it was just another dream, but it was real and I'm grateful." Lee, still groggy, asked her name. "My name is Angel," she replied, her voice as gentle as her smile. A week and 3 days passed, and the storm finally ceased. A messenger arrived with a letter. It read, "America, Russia, Southern Europe, and Africa have fallen to an army of darkness, now heading toward England." Nathan's voice was urgent and commanding as he addressed the White Knights. "Hurry, everyone suit up. The time has come for you to prove yourselves as White Knights." They set out for Dover, the journey filled with a sense of impending doom. It took them 2 days and 9 hours to reach Dover Castle. Once there, they quickly began preparing defenses. The news of an approaching army of 100 million demons led by Death himself was daunting. With only 5,000 White Knights, they knew they were vastly outnumbered, yet their resolve was unshaken. They stood ready to defend their homeland, knowing the battle would test their courage and strength to the limit. Chapter 8. Battle of Dover. Castle night had fallen, casting a gloomy pall over the land. Rain poured from the heavens, and a thick mist rolled in from the sea, shrouding everything in a veil of uncertainty. Thunder crashed and lightning flashed, instilling fear and doubt in some of the White Knights. Lee could sense their unease, and though he was sure Nathan could too, there was little to be done. War was upon them. England, the last free country on earth, was under siege. 5 hours passed in tense anticipation. The time was 11:30 at night, and apart from the rain and thunder, there was an eerie silence. Suddenly, a White Knight shouted, "What is that coming from the sea?" They all rushed to the castle wall nearest the water and saw the light approaching through the mist. Its identity was hidden, but Nathan's sharp eyes spotted danger. "Fireball, duck!" he screamed. They hit the ground as a large fireball struck the castle wall. More followed in rapid succession, a relentless barrage that left some White Knights paralyzed with fear. The onslaught continued for 6 hours until the first light of dawn broke. Stephen looked over the wall and shouted, "There are so many of them. Everyone, weapons ready, defend your country and your world." The White Knights rallied with a loud battle cry. Nathan decided their best defense was to hold the rooftop of the castle, forcing the demons into a bottleneck at the doorway. They braced the gate to the roof to delay the demons' entry. Nathan pulled Lee aside and instructed him to protect Angel at all costs. Standing at the back of the White Knights with Angel, Lee felt a sudden rush of resolve. Angel squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with hope and fear. "I hope we can find a way to end this. I don't want to fall into the hands of evil, but I'm glad you're here to protect me." Just then, Slaith leaped up to grab Angel. Stuart reacted swiftly, severing Slaith's hand, and Lee drew his dragon sword, plunging it through Slaith's chest. The demon fell from the castle, crashing into the water below, dead. Chapter 9. The Loss and Retreat from Dover Castle. The door to the rooftop trembled violently, each thud of the demon's assault echoing ominously. For 10 harrowing minutes, the White Knights braced themselves, their hearts pounding in anticipation. Finally, the door shattered, and demons poured through the bottleneck. Nathan's voice rang out, "Charge!" and chaos erupted. Stuart became a whirlwind of death, his blade slicing through demon throats and bodies with lethal precision. Despite their valor, some White Knights, overwhelmed by fear and exhaustion, fell to the demonic onslaught. Nathan, surrounded and wounded, fought valiantly until Stephen and Stuart carved a path to him, slaying numerous demons in their wake. Elise moved like a dancer, her sword a blur as she dispatched demon after demon, but fatigue was evident on every face. The relentless battle wore on, and the White Knights' numbers dwindled. Realizing the dire situation, Nathan called for a retreat. The White Knights began leaping from the castle top into the lake below, escaping in groups of 20. Stuart led the first group, his cloak tattered from a demon's near miss. As about 1,000 White Knights reached the other side of the lake, Nathan ordered Lee and Angel to jump. Suddenly, all the demons froze. Death himself appeared at the doorway, his eyes fixed on Lee and Angel. Time seemed to stand still, a cold fear gripping Lee's heart. Stephen's urgent voice shattered the spell. "If you don't get her out of here, it will be too late. Now jump!" Lee hurled Angel over the edge and followed, swimming frantically to shore with 18 other White Knights. Nathan then ordered a retreat to Holy Island Castle. As they fled, scenes of devastation unfolded before them. London and other cities lay in ruins, reduced to ash and flames. Along the way, they rescued 17 injured survivors, finally reaching a church to camp for the night. Their luck ran thin as their exhausted horses perished, forcing them to continue on foot. Chapter 10. Love and Hate Collide. Stuart prepared a modest meal and brought some to Lee and Angel. "We have 1,000 White Knights, but I do not feel safe. Do you feel the same?" Stuart asked, his voice filled with concern. Lee nodded. "Yes, but I know the armies of death are far away. We have enough time to rest until sunrise." As Lee ate, Angel sat quietly nearby, her expression troubled. "Is something wrong?" he asked gently. "I don't know if you White Knights can defend me after the next week. I don't think many of you will be left, but I know you'll survive, Lee. You have to, or the White Knights will fall easily," she replied, her voice trembling. She then walked away to speak with Stuart. Later that night, Angel woke Lee, her eyes filled with an unspoken yearning. "I'm sorry to wake you, but it hurts not being able to see your face," she whispered. Lee embraced her, his fingers gently combing through her hair, and kissed her tenderly. She joined him on his bed, and they fell asleep together. Lee dreamt of a world at peace, walking side by side with Angel, but his dream was shattered when he awoke to a dark figure poised to stab Angel. Lee leaped into action, stopping the assassin, who fled into the graveyard and tripped. Removing the helmet, Lee found it was Elise, tears streaming down her face. "I thought you loved me," she sobbed, her voice filled with anguish. "I never said I did," Lee replied, his voice firm but compassionate. "You better run. If they find out you tried to kill Angel, you're as good as dead." A dark shadow loomed behind Elise, gripping her throat. It was Nathan and Stuart, their expressions stern. "For what you did, you are no longer a White Knight. You may go wherever you like, but if any white knights find you, they have permission to kill you. Run now, Stuart commanded, his voice cold. Elise fled into the cemetery, her sobs echoing in the night. Stuart sighed deeply. She wanted to kill Angel out of jealousy. Love makes you do insane things. Lee returned to his bed, where Angel lay peacefully. He wished he could dream of a world without war again, a world where love did not lead to madness and hatred. Chapter 11. Over the Hills into Shadow. Lee couldn't sleep that night. The weight of the looming battle pressed heavily on his mind. Restless, he went outside to await the sunrise, preparing to wake the White Knights for the final leg of their journey to Holy Island Castle. As he scanned the horizon, a distant rumble, reminiscent of a moving train, drew his attention south of the castle. His heart sank as he saw a large legion of demons advancing. They must have marched through the night. Everyone, wake up! The demons are here! We must leave now! Lee's urgent shouts echoed through the camp, rousing the White Knights. Stuart burst through the doors, taking in the sight of the approaching army. Wake up! Prepare to leave! Leave anything unnecessary behind, he commanded, his voice filled with urgency. As they prepared to depart, Lee's thoughts strayed to Elise, wondering if she would survive. He glanced at Angel, who offered him a reassuring smile. To his other side, a young man with long, curly hair caught his eye. How can I help you, young knight? Lee asked, seeking to ease his own tension. The young White Knight replied, I am Jonathan. I am honored to fight alongside you, Lee, but I must warn you we are coming up to Stonehenge, and I believe we will be ambushed there. Lee nodded thoughtfully. If that's the case, I'm sure we will find a way through somehow. Jonathan seemed to hesitate, then mumbled, even if death himself is there, before walking off to talk to Stuart. Turning to Angel, Lee whispered, when we get to Stonehenge, stick close to me. I have a bad feeling about what's going to happen there. The group set off along a country path, moving briskly despite the gloomy weather and falling snow. As Stonehenge came into view, its ancient stones loomed ominously against the dark sky. None of the White Knights were in the mood for sightseeing, but the shortcut through Stonehenge was their best option. As they approached, Lee noticed additional rocks around the monument that hadn't been there before. A sense of foreboding settled over him. He found Jonathan and spoke quietly. I think you're right. We might be walking into an ambush. You can hear the evil whispers in the woods. Jonathan nodded grimly. If we get ambushed, get Angel, and head northeast, you'll come to a hill as big as a mountain surrounded by woods. It's the safest route because the woods cover you all the way to York. There's a keep there, and Angel would be safer. We could gather more people to fight. Lee considered Jonathan's words, but knew they lacked time. He saw defeat in Jonathan's eyes, yet also a glimmer of hope. We have to reach Holy Island as quickly as possible, he said firmly. A small, strong-looking man approached, speaking to Jonathan before bowing to Lee. I am Scott. I believe our best option is to go through the woods in the Midlands and head for York. Otherwise, we have no chance. Lee replied, our forces are split, and death would have chased Nathan to Holy Island. He will already be at York. There's no point in hoping there. All we can do is be strong and head for Holy Island. We must kill as many demons as possible. Chapter 12, Battle of Stonehenge. As the White Knights neared Stonehenge again, they saw a large frozen stream and snow beginning to fall. They planned to stop and eat at the top of the hill by Stonehenge. Lee eyed the lake and suggested laying a trap in case the demons came. He gathered a few White Knights, Jonathan, Stuart, David, Scott, and others, to weaken the ice. making it prone to breaking under heavy weight. After setting the trap, they returned to eat and spoke about their hopes if the war ended. Scott stood and shared his story of losing his parents to demons and his fear of a similar fate. Jonathan spoke of a lost love, a young knight who died at Dover, and his vow to avenge her. Stuart recounted the abduction of a woman by the demon Slaith and his desperate hope to find her again. Suddenly, loud screeching and screams echoed from the river. The demon army had arrived, standing by the river, but not on it. They needed to lure the demons onto the ice. 15 brave white knights, including Scott and Jonathan, descended and taunted the demons. The demons charged, and the ice broke under their weight, sending 300 demons plunging into the icy depths. Stunned, the remaining demons hesitated until their general ordered them to swim through and attack. The 15 white knights retreated to the top of the hill where their comrades were ready with boulders and rocks. As the soaked demons climbed the hill, Stuart ordered the boulders released, crushing many who couldn't dive out of the way. Forming a shield wall with spears and swords, the white knights braced for another attack. The first wave of demons clashed with the shield wall and fell back. The second wave was met with a volley of spears, leaving a gruesome scene of black blood and entrails. Stuart then ordered the white knights to draw swords and charge at the remaining demons. Lee stayed close to Angel, ready to defend her. A few demons broke through and surrounded them. Lee drew his sword, prepared to fight, when a dark-cloaked figure appeared beside him. "Need a hand?" the figure asked, in an American accent. He was a white knight, accompanied by 15 others. They charged at the demons, though one American white knight fell. Lee avenged him, severing a demon's arm and slicing its throat. The cloaked man introduced himself. "I'm John from America. We came ahead of the demons, looking for the White Knights of England. My father was a white knight who trained white knights in the USA. Now, all the people are slaves, awaiting the branding of 666. A king named Zardid is whispered among the white knights." Lee was stunned, but determined. "We won't be defeated or turned into slaves," he declared. John warned, "The demons you're fighting are a decoy. The rest are going around to ambush you. You'd better retreat." Meanwhile, Stuart engaged in a fierce battle with the demon general on the hill. The general swung his sword, but Stuart ducked and aimed for his leg. The general blocked with his other sword, cutting Stuart's arm. Stuart kicked the general in the groin and punched him in the face, but the general threw him over his shoulder. Recovering quickly, Stuart accused, "You're a cheat, fighting with 2 swords." The general sneered. "I don't have a spirit, but you do. You have 2 people fighting for you." The general struck Stuart down, placing a foot on his chest. "I have 2 swords, one for your body and one for your soul." Stuart defiantly declared, "This is not the moment of my death." He pulled a dagger from his armor and stabbed the general's foot. As the general fell back, Stuart threw the dagger into his chest, severed his arms, and decapitated him. "You can only hold one of us down with 1 foot," Stuart said. The remaining demons, witnessing their general's fall, wavered. Seizing the moment, the white knights pressed their attack, driving the demons back. The Battle of Stonehenge, though grueling, ended in a hard-won victory. Chapter 13. A Last Stand. The battlefield was strewn with the bodies of over 800 demons, but the victory came at a high cost. Only 850 white knights remained standing. Stuart and John conferred urgently, the news grim. "There's a larger army of demons heading our way. This was just a diversion," John warned. Stuart sighed. "We're too tired to move, but staying here means another battle. I'd rather keep moving." As night fell, the clear sky and full moon bathed the hill in a cold, eerie light. Lee spotted a solitary tree, its silhouette stark against the mist creeping around the hill. Then he saw it, a dark, tall figure, wielding what looked like an axe, followed by a horde of shadowy shapes. "It's Death," Lee whispered, his heart pounding. Stuart addressed the White Knights, his voice steady, despite the fear. "We need about 200 of us to stay and fight to the death. This will give Angel and the others a head start to reach Holy Island." A few brave souls volunteered, and Lee stepped forward to join them. "Lee, what are you doing? You won't survive. You can't just sacrifice yourself," Stuart said, concern etched on his face. Lee met his gaze. "I'll do whatever I choose. I'd rather stay here and actually do something to defend her." Stuart sighed deeply. "Fair enough. Stay here, but hold out as best as you can. I promise to defend her in your stead." He handed Lee his red dragon sword. "This sword is the best the White Knights have. Protect Angel with it, and may I carry your sword?" Lee nodded, accepting the sword and offering his in return. Stuart turned away, resolute, not looking back. Angel ran to Lee, tears streaming down her face. "I'm thankful for what you're doing, but why? I don't want to lose you now," she pleaded. Lee held her close. "To love someone means making sacrifices. I'll stay here and die for you if it's our only chance for peace." With a final, tearful embrace, Angel ran off with Stuart. Lee joined the other White Knights, noticing Stee at his side. "Let's show these evil scum there's nothing more powerful than the human spirit," Stee said, his voice full of defiance. They formed a defensive circle within the stones of Stonehenge as the demon army closed in. Death approached, his presence chilling. "If you're the last knight alive, I will spare you. You will fight in my arena until there's no human left to fight," Death intoned, before turning away. One White Knight lunged at Death, but he moved swiftly, grabbing the knight by the throat, slicing off his legs and tossing him into the demon horde. "Charge!" Death commanded, and 14,000 demons surged towards the 199 White Knights. The White Knights held their ground, using the Stonehenge rocks for cover, killing many demons. Lee saw Stee break 2 demons' necks with his bare hands before driving his sword through another. But the White Knights were falling fast. Lee and Stee fought back to back until they were separated. Time seemed to freeze as Lee saw Stee thrown against the wall by several demons. One demon, its face striped black and orange, bit into Stee's neck, stabbing him repeatedly. "No!" Lee screamed in fury, charging at the demons. He cut one down, then another, his sword stained with black demon blood and red human blood. Exhausted, he dropped his sword and threw a spear at the largest demon he could see, felling it with a scream. Another demon with an axe attacked. Lee ducked, pulling the demon down, and seized the axe, hacking it to death. Bleeding and in pain, Lee collapsed next to Stuart's sword. The demons began to kick and punch him. Just as he thought it was the end, they suddenly stopped and stood in line. Death approached, ready to deliver the final blow. But someone pushed Lee to the ground, stepping in to fight Death. As Lee struggled to see through his pain, he realized it was Elise, fighting with all her might. "Lee, run! Run while you can!" she shouted. Elise fought valiantly, but Death was relentless. She turned to Lee one last time, before Death grabbed her sword, snapped it, and threw her down. He drove his axe into her, lifting her body and throwing it against the wall. Lee, choking on his grief and anger, ran for the woods, heading northeast, as Jonathan had advised. Glancing back, he saw Elise's lifeless form, her sacrifice seared into his memory. He knew he had to reach Holy Island Castle through the woods of the Midlands. Chapter 14. Saving the People of Scarborough. Nathan and Stephen led the White Knights towards the sea, avoiding York. They arrived in Scarborough, a city yet untouched by demons, and noticed a keep on a large hill. That would be a good place to rest. It's high up and defensible if the demons catch up, Nathan suggested. Stephen agreed, and they walked through the city, gratefully accepting food and water from the residents. People tended to their wounds as they climbed the hill to the castle. The sea surrounded two sides of the castle, making it a strategic stronghold. In the hallway, Stephen questioned Nathan, "Why are we waiting here? The demon army will come soon. We barely escaped ourselves. What about Stuart, Angel, and Lee?" Nathan, frustrated, replied, "We need to rest, Stephen. Otherwise, we won't make it to Holy Island. We could recruit people here as White Knights. We'll stay for 2 days, then move on. If Stuart doesn't turn up with Lee and Angel, we'll assume they're dead or already at Holy Island." Stephen, still uneasy, walked away, leaving Nathan alone by the fire. An old man approached Nathan. "Have you ever heard about the 4 dragons?" the old man asked. Nathan shook his head, intrigued. "There are 4 dragons. When the demons rise, so will the dragons. The main dragon, black as night, can only be killed by a red dragon sword. There will also be a white dragon with good in it, but the dragons will be controlled by a demon wizard master. This town is a major nesting place for birds, so the dragons may come here. The fact that the town hasn't been attacked yet is significant. Are you ready for war, young knight?" the old man said, before disappearing into the darkness. Nathan sat by the fire, deep in thought. He wondered about Angel, Lee, and Stuart. Suddenly, Stephen burst in. "Nathan, come quick to the castle wall. There are large objects coming towards us from the sea and a few boats," Stephen shouted. Nathan ran to the castle walls, looking out to sea. He saw what appeared to be large birds and boats beneath them. "Everyone take cover," Nathan ordered. The White Knights ran for cover as large creatures flew over the castle, emitting loud swooping noises. One dragon with bright yellow-edged wings and a dark red body screeched loudly, releasing a dark red flame like a flare, signaling the boats. Nathan and Stephen sneaked into the city, urging people to seek shelter in the castle. The red dragon perched atop the castle, while an icy-skinned dragon flew over their heads, its breath freezing the air. The few ships landed, and demons lined up on the beach. An overweight, cloaked figure disembarked, his hood down to reveal a bald head and a pink face with 3 black lines across it. He held 4 dragon teeth, clearly the Dragon Master. The demons kneeled, chanting, "Hail Muhingo, brother of Zardad!" Rising, Muhingo commanded them to storm the city, take prisoners, kill White Knights, and seize the keep. Nathan and Stephen braced for the onslaught, knowing the battle for Scarborough had just begun. Chapter 15. Battle of the Dragons. As the demons began their advance northward across the South Bay beach, Nathan and Stephen sprinted back to the castle. The ground shook as the red dragon unleashed its fury, scorching the earth and leaving the White Knights scrambling for cover. Bows drawn, they tried to fend off the beast, but their arrows barely scratched its scales. Nathan and Stephen, cornered and desperate, drew their swords, ready to make a last stand against the monstrous creature. Just as the dragon opened its jaws to unleash a torrent of flames, a blinding light tore through the night sky. An angelic white dragon, wings shimmering with ethereal light, soared into view and collided with the red dragon. The 2 massive creatures engaged in a ferocious battle, their roars echoing like thunder. Nathan and Stephen took the opportunity to retreat to the keep, eyes glued to the sky as lightning flashed and the dragons clashed amidst the swirling clouds. The red dragon attempted to swoop down, but the white dragon positioned itself above, using its advantage to drive the red dragon toward the ground. As they plummeted, the red dragon spewed fire, but it couldn't reach its opponent. A bolt of lightning struck the red dragon, sending it crashing to the earth. Smoke rose from its lifeless body as rain began to fall. The white dragon's triumphant roar was met with cheers from the keep, the white knights celebrating their unexpected victory. Their celebration was short-lived, as the white dragon, now marked by battle scars, turned to face a new foe. An ice dragon, its scales glistening like frost in the moonlight, charged with a bone-chilling roar. The white dragon responded, diving into a deadly embrace with its icy adversary. They tumbled to the ground, locked in combat. Stephen, seizing his chance, sprinted towards the ice dragon. With precise, powerful strikes, he severed its throat, and the dragon's icy breath faded away. The white knights erupted in cheers, hailing Stephen as a dragon slayer. The victory was fleeting. A young knight, rushing to congratulate Stephen, was engulfed in flames, his body collapsing in a smouldering heap. Stephen turned to see the source, a massive black dragon, its eyes burning with malevolence. The white dragon, despite its injuries, rose to confront this new threat. The two titans clashed, but the black dragon's strength was overwhelming. The white dragon retreated into the storm clouds, using the lightning as a weapon. Hidden in the clouds, it pounced, driving the black dragon to the ground. Both lay still, and for a moment, hope flickered among the white knights. An old man, his eyes filled with ancient knowledge, approached Nathan. "That black dragon is not dead," he warned. "It will rise again and destroy the white dragon." As the white dragon struggled to stand, the black dragon roared back to life, spitting acid into its opponent's eyes. Blinded and weakened, the white dragon was no match. The black dragon's fiery breath incinerated the white dragon, its body tumbling into the sea. Despair gripped the white knights as the black dragon began tearing the keep apart. Meanwhile, at the beach's south end, demons captured and slaughtered humans, their cries echoing through the night. Muhingo, seated by his ships, reveled in the chaos, a sinister smile spreading across his face. In the city's streets, a fierce battle raged as Stuart, Angel, David, Scott, John, and Jonathan led a daring ambush against the demon guards. Blades clashed, and the demons, caught off guard, fell quickly, but the white knights, weary from constant fighting, knew they had to reach the keep. Stuart, charging towards Muhingo, was intercepted by 4 demons. He danced between them, a whirlwind of steel and fury, slaying them with deadly precision. 2 demons fled, only to be incinerated by the black dragon's breath. Muhingo's laughter cut through the air. "You shall never defeat my dragon. I hope you don't mind being cooked for my dinner." David, summoning his magic, created a shield of water to protect Stuart from the flames. The red dragon sword, a gift from Lee at Stonehenge, glowed with an otherworldly light. Stuart charged, the sword slicing through the dragon's scales. The beast screeched, leaping into the air in pain. David's voice rang out, urging Stuart to attack. With relentless fury, Stuart hacked at the dragon's belly, the sword cutting deeper with each strike. Finally, the black dragon fell, its death throes shaking the ground. Muhingo, stunned by the loss of his dragon, lashed out with dark magic, sending Stuart sprawling. David countered his own magic, pushing Muhingo onto a boat. "Come, young knight, let us fight in the air and let the gods decide our fate," Muhingo taunted, ascending into the stormy sky. Amidst thunder and lightning, they clashed. Muhingo's flames scorched the air, but David's wooden armor, crafted from enchanted trees, drew lightning bolts that struck Muhingo again and again. Muhingo, defeated, fell into the shallow sea with a resounding crash. David descended, his victory proclaimed by the roaring storm. With Muhingo's army defeated and the dragons slain, Scarborough lay in ruins. On the North Bay beach, Nathan and Stuart met, their faces lined with exhaustion and grief. "Where is Lee? Why isn't he here to witness such a victory?" Nathan asked. Stuart, his voice heavy with sorrow, replied, "We fell into a great battle at Stonehenge. He stayed behind with 200 white knights to make a last stand. He gave me his sword to protect Angel, but we must be strong. We should head for Holy Island tomorrow night. I don't know how long Lee held out, but something tells me he is still alive." Nathan nodded. "We leave at dawn. Make sure Angel gets enough rest and food for the journey to Holy Island Castle." Chapter 16. On the Run. Lee was alone now, pursued by Death and his army. With many miles ahead, and the White Knights believing him dead, he headed northeast. For 2 days, he traversed desolate roads and climbed hills without food. He finally stumbled upon a demon camp in the forest. Under cover of night, he silently dispatched the guards, his blade swift and merciless. Interrogating one, he learned of their food stash and remaining guards. Lee's voice was cold as he said, "I don't give evil mercy because it wouldn't give me any," before silencing the demon forever. Setting fire to the tents, Lee confronted the last guard by the fire. He burned the demon's face with a log and slew him, taking grim satisfaction in his victory. The next guard lost his hand, and Lee mockingly offered him the sword back before finishing him. With a heated blade, he cauterized the wounds of the last demon, delivering a chilling message. "If you survive, tell Death I don't fear him, and neither do the White Knights." Lee found sustenance in the remaining tent and collapsed into a deep sleep. His dreams were filled with visions of battles and warnings. He saw himself and his comrades standing against a greater evil, a dark figure accompanied by 4 horsemen. They warned him, "This is what is to come if Earth falls." He awoke with a start, his sword ready, the demon he spared laughing through the pain of his burns. The next day, Lee pressed on eastward, reaching a deserted beach and an abandoned army barracks. There he found a soldier, barely alive. The soldier, also named Lee, had fought demons in Africa and barely escaped. Together, they journeyed north towards Holy Island Castle, sharing the soldier's horse and cart. At Holy Island, the White Knights welcomed them. Lee, disguised to avoid being mistaken for a demon, was taken to Nathan and Stuart. Revealing himself, he was greeted with astonishment and respect. Despite his wounds, he joined them for a final meal before their last stand. Stuart, returning Lee's red dragon sword, bowed deeply. They spoke of dragons and battles, their camaraderie strengthening their resolve for the fight ahead. Chapter 17. Grim Reaper Plans. End of the world. Death learned of the dragon's defeat and the demon's vanquishing, seething with rage at the news of Lee's escape from Stonehenge. A severely wounded demon relayed the information, struggling to speak through its injuries. Death's eyes blazed with fury as he snarled, "I want him hanging off this cliff by his toes when we find him. How dare he escape death?" Turning to one of the surviving White Knights, now a prisoner, Death demanded, "Where are your friends going?" The knight, defiant to the end, spat in Death's face. Grim Reaper, unfazed, laid the knight on a sacrificial rock in the middle of Stonehenge and ordered his witch chief Sliveoak to cast a spell. Sliveoak obeyed, her incantations igniting the knight in flames. The knight's agonized screams echoed until he succumbed to the terrible burns. "It's time to call the master," Death declared, his voice filled with dark anticipation. "Go to Earth and let him know we can now open the gate of heaven by force because we have covered Earth with darkness." Death knelt, touching the rock in the middle of Stonehenge. As the demons began their ominous chant, a dark shadow enveloped the ancient site. The shadow took the shape of a man sitting on the rock, then solidified into a figure with terrible burns on his face and a muscular, blue-tinged body. It was Satan. He raised his hands, and the demons cheered. Dark clouds formed a swirling tornado around Stonehenge. Satan and his evil army entered the tornado, the gateway to heaven. Before disappearing, he commanded, "March on Holy Island Castle, capture the woman, and destroy all the White Knights except Lee, who holds the red samurai sword." Then Satan vanished into the sky. Grim Reaper gathered his remaining 5 generals and ordered them to head north, surrounding Holy Island Castle to ensure no escape. The generals formed up and began their march north, away from Stonehenge. The battle for the dimensions of earth and heaven was about to begin. Grim Reaper devised a meticulous plan with his generals. Slive Oak would lead the main assault on the castle's front, while Norfair would attack from the east. Essence Say would encircle the castle, ensuring no one escaped. Grim Reaper, alongside Slive Oak, would spearhead the attack, with Generals Ravel and Fretgrog providing backup to guarantee victory. The Dark Army then began their 3-day march to Holy Island Castle. Chapter 18. The Last Party. At Holy Island Castle, Nathan threw a party to lift the spirits of the White Knights. The Great Hall had been rebuilt for better safety and stronger defense. Roast pork, beef, vegetables, beer, and wine were served. Nathan made a speech. "I know you all think the end of the world is near, but if this is our end, I suggest we make evil wait a little longer to achieve their goal. Let us show them that no matter how much evil poisons the world, the good times of parties and love still stand strong among humans. We will fight them to the last man." He looked at Lee, implying that Lee would be the last man alive. Lee gathered with the generals of the White Knights, Stephen, Stuart, and Nathan. "I will make a short speech too," Lee said. Climbing onto a table, Lee addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us forget about what's coming our way and just have the best night of our lives. Come on, let us toast to the White Knights, who will always love and cherish the best that life can bring." The music began to play, and the room was bright with red carpet and orange curtains. The women wore light blue or green dresses, and the men were in red or white. Lee wore white with a gold line. They had decided to dress in the old ways for the night, calling it a toga party. As everyone ate, Lee felt Angel's eyes on him. She rose and hinted for Lee to follow her to another hall. Lee finished his drink and went to her. She grabbed his hand and pulled him in, saying, "I thought I lost you forever, but you came back like Jesus rose from the dead." Lee, speechless, just looked at her, and they kissed. Nathan interrupted, "I hope I'm not disrupting, but you guys should come back to the party and spend time with everyone." They followed Nathan back into the main hall. Stuart and Stephen began to talk to Angel. Lee noticed John with a young woman he hadn't seen before, who had very short hair. Lee approached them. "I'd like to thank you for saving me from those demons at Stonehenge. I'm truly grateful," he said to John. John replied, "That is fine. By the way, this young woman here is Kelly. She is also a White Knight and was at Stonehenge." Lee bowed to her. "You are a strong warrior. I am glad to have you fighting with us." She bowed back. "I'm honored to fight alongside you." Lee then noticed Clavery, a soldier, alone in the corner drinking. He approached him. "Do you have any sword skills? You're going to need them tomorrow." Clavery replied, "Yeah, I have an idea. I will do my best with the sword I'm given." "Enjoy the rest of your night, my friend," Lee said, then walked away. He sat at a table in front of Stuart, who smiled and said, you did real good getting out of that outnumbered situation. Elise is forgiven for what she did because she saved your life, which is now very needed for the upcoming fight." Lee nodded in agreement. Feeling tired from the long journey, he decided to go to bed. Nathan approached, asking, "Why do you leave so early? The party is just beginning." Lee replied, "I'm so tired, I need sleep. I'm sorry to upset you, I mean, no disrespect, but if I stay another moment, I will faint from exhaustion." Nathan bowed in approval. Lee found a room made for him and fell asleep. In his dream, Lee was outside Holy Island Castle with his sword but no armor. A tall, dark figure approached him, saying, "Now there is no escape for you, Lee. You must fight me." Lee drew his sword. "I know now that you need the woman for other purposes besides world domination, but I need to find out why." The Grim Reaper replied, "You are wrong. Now say nothing and fight." Lee swung his sword at the Grim Reaper's face. The Grim Reaper dodged and cut Lee's long black gown, revealing a dark red skeleton with souls trying to break out of its remaining skin. "Soon you will be with them inside me, with no escape," Death said. He lunged forward with his axe, aiming to slice Lee's chest open, but Lee woke up screaming, "Ah!" Stuart came running in, asking, "What is it?" "Nothing. Just a nightmare, my brother," Lee replied. It was still dark outside, but Stuart said it was close to noon. Confused by the darkness, Lee went to speak with the other White Knights about their last stand. Nathan and Stuart whispered, and then approached Lee. "Lee, no matter what happens, you must protect Angel. David told me today that he had a vision that you will know what to do with her to save everything and everyone," Nathan said. Lee was astonished. Nathan continued, "Right, about our defense. They will probably surround us and come in from the east, west, and head on, because those are the easiest ways in. So we will brace the gate and have a shield wall standing behind the gate, like a double gate, with a spear wall behind the shield wall to do some damage to those demons. If they break that, they will push us into the courtyard. The courtyard will be empty because we are going to encircle it with oil so that when the demons arrive, we can toast them alive. After that clears up, they will probably send more demons. We will charge straight at them to defend the stairway to the second level of the castle and hold them in the courtyard as long as possible. We will then create a shield wall at the top of the stairway, forcing the demons into a bottleneck. If they break through that, we will fall back to the hallway on the other side of the castle and form yet another shield wall covered with a spear wall. If they break that, we will retreat to the roof. The doorway there will lead them into a bottleneck, and the stairway will be covered with wood and hay soaked in oil. Once all the White Knights are on the roof, we will set fire to the hay, burning whoever is on the middle floor because everywhere will be booby-trapped with gunpowder explosives. We will then await the rest on the roof, where we will make our last stand and hopefully come out alive. Any questions? Good. Now get to work on the traps. Chapter 19. Battle of Holy Island. The sky was clear, revealing a full moon and a canopy of stars. Yet, a thick mist enveloped the castle, lending an eerie atmosphere. Nathan approached Lee, his face grave. "Lee, if you're the last defender alive and Angel is no longer in our hands, light this fuse," he instructed, handing over a torch. "It will blow the castle and everything in it, ensuring Death suffers heavy losses." Lee nodded, accepting the torch. The defenses were meticulously arranged. Lee stood at the corner of the roof with Angel, who handed him a small vial. "If we don't make it, and you're the last man alive, take this. It's poison. It will kill you slowly but painlessly. Death wants you alive to take you to Satan because you cheated him once. Promise me you'll take it." Lee nodded solemnly, pocketing the vial. As Lee scanned the landscape, From the castle wall, he spotted a crooked figure approaching the gate. The figure was Zuo-Chi, the samurai who had raised him. Once inside, Zuo-Chi climbed to the top of the castle and addressed Li. "That woman can also save Earth, but she must be in the demon world or hell. With death in hell and Satan in heaven, if she dies in the demon world, the gateways will lock for 2,000 years, and evil will be nearly eradicated." Li knew he was right. Zuo-Chi continued, "I have crafted a new sword for myself and will fight alongside you, my son." Li smiled, acknowledging his mentor's resolve. Meanwhile, Stuart and Nathan assessed their forces. "How many men do we have?" Stuart inquired. 3,009, Nathan replied. "It's not great, but it's something." Suddenly, drums echoed through the misty darkness, and shadowy figures emerged from the forest. Demons surrounded the castle, turning the sky red as rain began to fall. The demons taunted the White Knights, but they stood resolute. The demons advanced slowly towards the castle. The drawbridge, rigged with gunpowder, exploded under Clavery's command, killing many demons, but also blowing a hole in the gate. Shieldmen quickly braced the gate as demons crossed the partially destroyed drawbridge. Slive Oak commanded a charge, and Nathan screamed, "Shield wall, commence!" The shield wall formed, and the demons collided with it, trying to break through. The shieldmen, armed with swords, sliced throats and severed limbs. Stuart shouted, "Spears!" The spearmen launched their weapons over the shield wall, killing many demons, including Fretgrog. The demons continued their push, eventually breaking through the shields, forcing the White Knights to fight with swords alone. Some knights were thrown to the ground and stabbed, others bitten and slashed on the walls. The demons killed the knights at the gates and poured into the courtyard, forming a defensive circle. As demons gathered, John lit the fuse, igniting the courtyard and burning over 800 demons alive. On the second level, John prepared a larger shield wall with more men and spears. "Reform the line! Reform the line! Spears behind shields, swords ready to charge!" he commanded. Slive Oak and Ravel led the next wave of demons through the bottleneck. The shield wall and spears cut down many demons. Then the shields were dropped, swords drawn, and John called the charge. The two sides clashed fiercely. Ravel, seeking revenge for a past encounter with John in America, challenged him. John smirked. "I won't run this time, Ravel, one-on-one." Ravel grinned, revealing green teeth and black gums, and charged. John ducked, threw Ravel over his shoulder, and impaled him, killing him instantly. Next, Slive Oak, wielding two swords, challenged John. Taller and stronger, Slive Oak's strikes were powerful. John blocked the first strike, but was cut by the second. He aimed for Slive Oak's legs, but was kneed in the head and slashed across the face. Badly injured, John lay on the floor, struggling to stand. Slive Oak taunted, "Come on then, what are you going to do?" John charged, slicing off Slive Oak's hand, but then tripped and twisted his ankle. Slive Oak killed a nearby defender, took his spear, and threw it into John's chest. Despite the wound, John pulled out the spear and limped towards Slive Oak, only to be fatally stabbed. The White Knights fought harder in John's honor, but they were overwhelmed. Death entered through the stairway, ordering Slive Oak to push on while he dealt with the remaining White Knights. Taunting them, Death said, "Come on, there are 7 of you. Let's see if you can beat me." The White Knights charged, but Death was too skilled. He killed them swiftly, one by one, until only Scott remained. Scott fought bravely, but was overpowered. Death laughed as he killed Scott, then ordered his demons to follow Slive Oak to the roof and kill the remaining White Knights. On the third level, Stuart set the second floor and stairway alight, burning over 2,000 demons. Slive Oak, protected by a shield, survived and waited for reinforcements. They forced their way onto the rooftop, where the White Knights formed another shield wall. Slive Oak ordered a charge, and Stuart pulled back to Nathan. "Charge, my brothers!" Nathan yelled, and the remaining White Knights surged forward. Kelly, seeking revenge for Jon's death, charged at Sliveoak. They clashed fiercely, but Sliveoak was too strong. Cutting off Kelly's arm, she continued to fight with one arm until they simultaneously impaled each other. Sliveoak died first, and Kelly, with her last breath, urged the White Knights to continue fighting. As Sliveoak's attack persisted, Norfair arrived with more demons. Surrounded, Stephen fought bravely, killing several demons before confronting Norfair. Their swords clashed, and Stephen fought valiantly but was slowly overpowered. In a final desperate move, Stephen threw his dagger, hitting Norfair in the throat before stabbing him in the gut. Mortally wounded, Stephen fell over the castle wall, drowning in the water below. Stuart decapitated the dying Norfair, leaving only Essence. Death ordered Essence to move in, and the demons overran the rooftop. Stuart joined Lee, vowing to defend Angel together. Meanwhile, Nathan, demonstrating his superior sword skills, fought Essence. They clashed, and Nathan overpowered him, killing him with a final blow. Death emerged, and the battle reached its climax. With only 700 White Knights left against 4,000 demons, the White Knights formed another shield wall to protect Angel. Grim Reaper sent demons to attack Lee and Stuart, who fought bravely but were eventually overpowered. As Grim Reaper approached Angel, Nathan blocked his path. They fought fiercely, but Grim Reaper, knowing the White Knight's fighting style, gained the upper hand. He threw Nathan into a wall, fatally injuring him. Dying, Nathan called out to Lee, urging him to kill Death and protect Angel. Lee drew his dragon sword and faced Death. They fought intensely, and Lee, remembering his samurai training, managed to slice Death's cloak. Zuochi's spirit urged Lee on, and he fought with renewed vigor. Death called for reinforcements, but Lee and Stuart fought them off. As the last two White Knights stood against Death, Clavery joined them for the final stand. In a desperate move, Lee proposed a deal to Death. "If I light this fuse, it will blow the castle and kill everyone, including Angel. You need her to destroy heaven, but hell is unguarded. Why not take her and invade hell?" Intrigued, Death asked, "What do you want in return?" "Freedom for humanity and 10 minutes alone with Angel?" Lee demanded. Death considered and agreed. Lee explained the plan to Stuart and Clavery. If Angel died in Death's dimension, it would close the gateways and destroy all evil. Angel, understanding the sacrifice, took the poison from Lee. "I love you," she whispered before falling unconscious. Lee, heartbroken, carried Angel to Death. "You are wiser than I thought," Death admitted, taking Angel and disappearing into his realm. Death invaded hell, claiming the throne, but as Angel's life faded, a powerful force destroyed Death and his army. The White Knight's souls were freed, ascending to heaven. Amid the ruins of Holy Island Castle, Lee and Stuart stood victorious but weary. "We lost the battle but survived," Lee said, his voice filled with mixed emotions. "We are the last White Knights on Earth," Stuart replied. "Shall we train new White Knights, or is it time to lead normal lives?" Lee gazed at the sunrise. "We should begin training new ones just in case. The world will always need protectors." As they walked away, the weight of their victory and loss settled on their shoulders, knowing that peace had been restored, but vigilance would always be required.